Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Handsome German, the only show on the internet. And today I figured I'd try to do something a little bit different from my usual modus operandi, I suppose. Ever since I got the Steam Deck, I've been thinking about ways of making maybe something more unique than just, does this game run on Steam Deck? But so far, I haven't really come up with anything. So, as a result, I have decided that I'm going to try and do a monthly series, which hopefully isn't too much of a commitment for someone with as few spoons as I have, um, where I will essentially get Humble Choice, hopefully in the future with store credit from referring some of you people over there, which would help out a lot and make this little hobby of mine not cost money. That would be awesome. And yeah, I decided get Humble Choice, go through all the games, and basically figure out how many of them are worth it to get if you can only play them on a Steam Deck. And for that purpose, I have enabled an FPS counter in the top left. For some of the more complex games, I've enabled full little analytics breakdown, so you can tell which parts of the system are being worked too hard. I didn't think I needed it for this first game that we're going to take a look at, which is Coromon. And essentially, what this is a Pokemon with worse monster designs, equally bad writing, better music, as what I've heard from the modern games. Just like this battle track absolutely slaps, I think. I hope you can hear it. I don't know how well I balanced the audio. Um, what I will absolutely give the game is that, unsurprisingly, it runs at 60 frames per second the whole way through. No problems, no adjusting of settings required. Very occasionally you see it blip down to 58 frames per second, but that doesn't matter, it's not noticeable, and the game is turn-based anyway. And I really wish I could say more about it other than it is just Pokemon. There are some nice features that would have been included by modders if the developers hadn't thought of them. Stuff like enabling faster game speeds, faster battle speeds. There's a built-in Nuzlocke mode that you can enable. There's normal Nuzlocke, and you can catch as many Coromon as you want Nuzlocke, which are two separate difficulty options. I just went with normal because, yeah, I'm not gonna go hardcore on the first playthrough of a game I've never even heard of before playing it yesterday. Um, but yeah, it has a lot of really nice customizability in it. You may have gotten bored of listening to me earlier and looked at the options I was scrolling through. Yeah, so basically, it's an old school Pokemon game with modern options menus. And that's it. That's unfortunately all I can say about it. It's all right. I'm personally probably not gonna play it again, to be totally honest, because I have grown out of monster collecting games a while ago. And yeah, let's move on to the next game. We're doing these in alphabetical order. No, that's a spoiler. Oops, that's the wrong button. Oh god. What am I doing? Ah, yes. I'm too young to die. So next up we have Fashion Police Squad. And I'm just gonna skip the intro. If you want to see it, you can play the game yourself. So this is an old school boomer shooter called Fashion Police Squad with an interesting little twist. Namely that you're not fighting demons or Nazis, you're fighting people with bad fashion sense. So I'm sure that I would be totally safe if I came across them in the wild. As you can see here, debonair. Sorry, I have to laugh because this game is just cracking me up. You start off with a paintball gun that you can use to make gray suits more colorful. And once you do that, the people who wear them will suddenly become a lot happier. And that alone is already a great concept for a game, especially considering that mechanically it's exactly the same as Doom. Only in this game there's hard counters. Instead of you being able to basically use any weapon you want against any target, in this one you have to pick a specific weapon for each enemy, which at first I thought would be annoying once you get more weapon types. But they don't usually throw that many different enemies at you at the same time. So you can often just stay with the weapon that you start the encounter with for most of the encounter. As you can see here in this game, you pick up scissors to cut ribbons that block the way. If you saw the ribbon earlier, you may have seen the dialogue where the main character, Des, I believe his name is, says that there's no way around it, which is just funny. It's just a stupid video game gag. And yeah, so like I said, you start off with a paintball gun and make people's suits more colorful. Then you gain the ability to drain excess color from objects and enemies, which is a different enemy type who charges at you, kind of, what are they called? Pinkies? I don't know my Doom lore. Who you can drain the excess color out of. And then you gain a needle gun that you use to fit people's suits better. And it's just silly. There we go. There's the scooter enemy. And every enemy type has this really flashy introduction. It's just really stylish. And yeah, there you can see draining his color energy. And when you fill up your color energy with your main gun, you get 1 magazine's worth of super bullets. And all of that just creates a nice push and pull, as Sakurai would say, where you keep finding ways to temporarily buff yourself, and then you use that buff to take out the next encounter, and then you search for stuff again. And I'm just explaining what an old school FPS is at this point. And this game is an old school FPS in every way except that it's totally non-violent. At least you don't hurt anybody. And yeah, I think that about covers everything about this game. It also has a very pleasant sense of humor in general. As you can see, all the text pop-ups when you take out an enemy are just really fun. They just make me smile every time they happen. Classy. A very pleasant sense of humor that isn't obnoxious, probably because the game mostly doesn't have voice acting, which actually works in its favor at a lot of points. And yeah, I think that about covers it for Fashion Police Squad. You get you can charge up some kind of berserk equivalent, as you can see here, where your character is just incredibly classy. Yeah, you know what a berserk power up does. So yeah, I absolutely recommend this game very strongly. I'm definitely going to finish it. I'm already excited to get back to it once I'm done editing. It is my one of my two favorite games of this month's Humble Choice. Moving on. Next up, we have Humankind, which, if you think this looks like Civilization, that's because this game is basically like Civilization. And I haven't kept up with the Civ titles at all, to be perfectly honest. I only played Civ 2 and 3 when I was a kid, and the one on DS also in multiplayer a lot, which was tons of fun. This game is fine also. It has also has a pleasant sense of humor that becomes very apparent in the opening monologue about how boring life used to be before humans showed up. And yeah, it's true. Things definitely got more interesting since humanity started existing. So in this game, basically, if you've never played something like this before, the goal is essentially to become the most noteworthy civilization in the world. And you do that at first by growing your tribe, which you do by finding food sources, hunting. You, unlike Civilization, where you start off by building your first city, in this game you start off with a band of nomads who then grow into an entire frickin' culture. And I wasn't able to get deep enough into the game to really figure out how it compares to at least the old civilizations. I know this game is on mixed reviews on Steam, is at mixed reviews on Steam, which probably means it doesn't compare too favorable to the new Civ games. Um, yeah, so you start off by doing things that are appropriate to the era that you live in, essentially. So, like I said, it starts off by you growing your tribe, which you do by gaining food, which you can either get by hunting or by finding food sources like berries or nuts or whatever. And occasionally you're going to make choices that will shape the kind of civilization your people are going to become, which is really cool that it starts you off very early with occasionally making incredibly long term decisions, which I've made it into the ancient era, which is only the second era. Um, After about 2 hours of play, I made it halfway through that in terms of advancement stars or whatever they're called. Whatever they're called, era stars. And yeah, once you have gained enough influence, which you do by doing the regular things I've already said, hunting, finding places of interest, gaining food, growing your population, you can found your first settlement, Then once you have a settlement and grow a little bit further, you get to advance to the ancient era where you get to turn your settlement into a proper city. From that city, you can build units and different buildings. You can start researching new technologies, which is the main way of advancing your people. And it goes, from my understanding, from the very dawn of mankind, from the first tool usage all the way to outer space. So that's cool. Nothing you haven't seen before if you've played a historic 4X game before. Um, I think it's a little bit too early for me to tell if I'm going to enjoy this game all that much. I What I've played so far, I have enjoyed. I don't really see why it would be at mixed reviews right now. To me, it looks like a positive easily. Um, it is perfectly playable on Steam Deck. The text might be a little bit small for some people. I know some of the smaller text is too small for me, and I have decent eyesight. The frame rate isn't per. the frame rate isn't particularly stable, which is a shame, but it doesn't really affect the gameplay at all since it's all turn based. So, if you like 4X games and you're tired of the ones you've already played, Humankind is definitely another one. It's kind of the Coromon of 4X strategy games in that regard. Speaking of things being the Coromon of the genre, here we have Symphony of War, the Coromon of Fire Emblem games. This is a little bit too loud. These games have very inconsistent volumes. Oh, that's even louder. Okay. So I think the game explains itself fairly quickly. You move your units around. Each unit consists of several individual soldiers. You can create new units while outside of battle by recruiting more soldiers with the gold that you earn during missions. And it's all very basic, honestly. It's a strategy RPG, as you can very plainly see. And what I've played so far, the strategy gameplay is rock solid. I really can't complain. There's nothing wrong with it. The graphics are all over the place. You can see the portraits are actually of pretty high quality. However, the actual battle animations and that village next to that castle kind of look like garbage, to be honest. They don't look very good. I forgot to check if this was made in Strategy RPG Maker or whatever that software is called, which obviously I wouldn't hold against the game because that's what the software is for. I think the sound cut out. Did the sound cut out? Okay. So we don't have sound for this part, which is always great when a game is called Symphony of War and then I can't present the soundtrack. I don't remember the soundtrack, to be perfectly honest, so you're not really missing much. This game, what I think is notable, is sitting at an overwhelmingly positive on Steam, which, okay, I guess PC gamers are deprived of Fire Emblem games, even more so than people who have a Switch are deprived of good Fire Emblem games, of which there haven't been any in a couple of years. What else is there to say about this game? It has a unit upgrade system. It has a formation system, which it doesn't explain very well. But I assume that units that are in front are going to take damage more often than units that are in the back. And you can arrange your troops however you see fit. And that's all there really is to say about this one. It doesn't have any outstanding features. It doesn't feature voice acting. It doesn't feature particularly beautiful art, except for the portraits, which are totally solid. And yeah, like you're about to see the walk animation. It doesn't look good. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel weighty. Um, it yeah, it doesn't have very good feedback in any real shape or form. But like I said, it's sitting at overwhelmingly positive, and it is a strategy RPG, which means you probably have to get pretty far in to get a definitive answer as to whether or not this game is worth your time, which is unfortunately the eternal paradox of the RPG. I will say it runs perfectly fine on Steam Deck, and the controller controls work perfectly, work the same as any Fire Emblem game, which is to say they work well. Except for the sensitivity, maybe. It's a little too easy to overshoot a unit when you're just trying to move one or two squares at a time. Okay, moving on to the next game. So next up we have Terraformers. There's a lot of reading in this game, so it doesn't look very exciting. Um, so Terraformers is basically a board game. I think it actually ignore that. Ignore all of that. It's me turning off the performance settings because there's too much in the top of the screen to look into, and it was covering it up. The game runs perfectly fine, so no need to worry about that. And it does have full controller support, which is always very nice to see. I don't think a turn based game really has an excuse not to have controller support because it doesn't matter that it's slower than mouse and keyboard. So, in this game, you terraform Mars, so it's a little punny with the Terraformers bit that they put in the title. This game I find incredibly hard to gauge because I I didn't fully get it. I understood what I had to do. I understood that I am supposed to lose the first couple attempts because this game is meant to be a challenge. And I can appreciate that. The problem is that it's very much reminiscent of those European style board games where everyone kind of plays in parallel to one another but doesn't really interact with the other players, except maybe occasionally build a road in a place where another player would have liked to build their road. And that lack of interaction is something that really turns me off of a lot of European style board games. And this one is basically a single player version of that. You build things, you have to make sure that your population is happy. If your population is unhappy, too unhappy, the whole Settling Mars project will be considered a failure and you game over. The expectations that your population have are growing every year, I believe, every Yeah, I think so. It doesn't really matter how often. They're growing every phase, so you have to make life more and more pleasant as time goes on. And apparently, by the end of it, you're gonna have terraformed the whole place with oceans and everything. Maybe a breathable atmosphere, probably a breathable atmosphere, I would assume. Um, Ultimately, I can tell that there's a lot of depth to this game and a lot of meaningful decision making. I personally don't like it, which is unfortunate because I can tell when a game is quality, and this is definitely a quality game. 100% no doubt. If you like investing dozens of hours into a failed project, if you like struggling to keep things running, if you like restarting everything all over again with all the knowledge that you've gained, then this game is definitely for you. I think I already said that it runs perfectly on the Steam Deck, and I think I already said that it has controller support. So, hey, if this looks interesting to you, by all means, this is the cheapest way you're gonna get this game, and Fashion Police Squad. So it's already a better deal than buying either of those games on their own. Alright, next up we have the Callisto Protocol, which is a horror game, as you can already tell very easily, that has had a mixed reception. I heard nothing but negative things about this game, so I was kind of surprised to see a game that is so maligned to. Oh, this is too loud again. So I was surprised that they put a game that's so maligned into Humble Choice, but there's two other games with mixed reviews in the Humble Choice this time. So who knows, maybe their quality standards are just dropping. But I'm here to say that from what I've played, I actually kind of like this game. I'm not usually big on horror, it's just stressful. I don't like playing it by myself. I like playing it when there's other people there to turn it more into a let's laugh at the violence and not as a let's eagerly await the next jump scare, because if you don't wait for it, it's gonna scare the shit out of you. That kind of thing. Um, it To cover the Steam Deck side of things first, runs at a consistent 30 frames per second at the recommended Steam Deck settings. It automatically just sets it to Steam Deck in the graphics options, so no need to adjust anything. It looks pretty phenomenal on the small screen. I know it looks pretty blurry when you blow it up to television, because I'm looking at it on a television right now. But on the small screen, no, it's one of the best looking games I've played on the Steam Deck, honestly. And there's a couple of things about this game that I want to say. I think this is the most well known of the games, so you probably have already made up your mind about it. There were a couple of moments in this game that made me like it. It starts off with the fact that this is really distracting. That the little health indicator in the back of your neck is never explained with words. There's just a moment where your character briefly flatlines and then gets injected with stuff, and then the little green lights start going back on, and he wakes back up. And oh, this is gruesome. If you like your games gory, then this game definitely has some points in that regard. So that was one moment that I really liked. The fact that I never said out loud that this is your health indicator. And the other moment is when I read specifically the words, "There is no timing window," when they explain how you dodge enemy attacks, which you do by holding left or holding right. And apparently all of these videos are just gonna stop having audio halfway through, which, good job, Decky Recorder, you did it again. And that in combination with, there isn't a timing window under the left image. You can read that right there. And the fact that they've added 2 new gameplay modes, Hardcore and Dismemberment, I believe they're called, and did not change the fact that there isn't a timing window, means that they're fully committed to the choices that they made, which means this wasn't an oversight. This was what they wanted the game to be like. And honestly, if you're like me, then the game still has some level of challenge left in it, even with this incredibly forgiving dodge mechanic. Now, I think I'm gonna soon move on to the next game. Basically, this is Dead Space, but with melee weapons. I'm sure you get guns later too, but I haven't gotten one yet. I also played through a stealth segment, which I can jump to. Oh, we have audio again. Are we gonna see the introduction of the bots? Let's see. You can see here me sneaking around in a... I like these murder bots. I like them. They're very threatening. You see them completely annihilate people earlier in the game. So grumpy sounding. Is that the right word? I know they're robots, so they can't really be grumpy, but they sound grumpy to me. So yeah, there's stealth, there's melee combat with a very forgiving dodge mechanic. Apparently the story isn't very good. So far the writing struck me as pretty solid. The performances, rock solid, really nothing to complain about there. The facial capture is astonishingly good. And yeah, like I said, this game is probably not perfect. It's definitely not perfect, given how poorly it was received by so many outlets. But it's probably enjoyable enough. I'm interested in playing more, which is more than I can say of some other games in this bundle. So, hey, take that for what it's worth. You've probably seen enough of it by now to have a vague idea. Oh, is this the one where I get my head punched off? I think this is the one where I get my head punched off. Yep. So with that, we can move on to the next game. Like I said, the game still offers a decent amount of challenge if you're not good at it. So next up we have the Excavation of Hobbs Barrow, which is a apparently deliberately old school point and click game with delightfully with voice acting, which makes a huge difference in a game like this where if you compare it to other old school point and clicks without voice acting, those tend to feel really empty really fast. This game has it, and it's pretty solid. The game also has my favorite feature that any point and click can have, which is teleporting to an exit when you double tap the A button. It makes such a huge difference when you're backtracking or when you're lost, not to have to watch your character meander across the entire screen every single time. Now, so far, I've only really solved one puzzle, and looks like the audio is cutting out again. I don't know what is wrong with Decky Recorder. Can't really hear the voice acting. Okay, there we go.
I assure you, my goal is more noble than petty grave robbery.
So, yeah, the main character is essentially a grave robber, but for historical purposes, which, you know, makes all the difference, I guess. It's important to learn about history so you can avoid repeating it, America. Stop repeating history, America. Israel. Anyway, now that I've scared half of the world's population off, can you stop talking? It's really distracting. I'm So, as you can see, the game looks great. It looks like an old school point and click with occasional rotoscoped visuals. If you don't know what rotoscoping is, it's basically taking a video of the real world and then drawing art over it to make it as fluid and lifelike as possible, which in some cases, like the old Prince of Persia games, is great at conveying a sense of weight and realism, while in other cases, depending on how you use it, is amazing at conveying a sense of creepiness, the uncanny valley, where something is just close enough to real life that you recognize it as real, but not close enough for you to fully accept that it actually exists, is how I would explain that. I'm sure there's a better explanation of that out there. So this is a fairly standard point and click in terms of puzzle solving so far. Drunk guy falls asleep, go to your room, get some water, pour it over his head. And then you can talk to him again. That was the only puzzle I've solved so far. That, and I got stuck at the train station for about 5 minutes trying to figure out how to read a letter. Turns out you have to press X on top of the letter. Good to know. Good to know. Definitely should have read the tutorial when I had the chance. What I will say about this game that sets it apart from other point and click games, which is a genre that I don't usually play, is the presentation and the atmosphere. I'm about to show you a clip of a cutscene which sold me on wanting to play the rest of the game, because if they manage to make a cat look like that, I have to know what an actual monster would look like in this world. So let's turn up the volume. Go to 20. Let's just enjoy this for a second. I'll shut up. No, I won't. I won't shut up. I never shut up. Oh, is the door opened? Oh, it's a cat. It's the cat you saw earlier. Look at how creepy that is. Look at how confused she looks. And look at how fucking hideous this looks. And this is where I stopped playing immediately after this cutscene. Because I was like, okay, I've seen enough. I've seen enough to say this is one of the 2 games that I recommend the absolute most out of this entire bundle. This and Fashion Police Squad already make the €10 totally worth it, in my opinion. And now we get to the final game. We get to Victoria 3. Where, I'll be honest, I read all of the instructions to this game and I just hated it. I absolutely despised everything. This game is too much for me personally. If you've played a game by Paradox Interactive before, then you probably already know what you're in for. It's a grand strategy game. You deal with politics, the economy, with wars and trading, which I know I just said politics like 4 times. And basically, you just try to accomplish whatever you want in the world. This is the tutorial playing as Sweden. I'm reading a hell of a lot, trying to get a grip of this game. It is playable on a Steam Deck. The frame rate dips occasionally, but it doesn't really matter. There's no twitch action required. The game plays a lot better with a keyboard and mouse, I imagine. There's a hell of a lot of shortcuts. There's a hell of a lot of windows. And it's just too much for me. It just doesn't end. And I would have tried to stick to this game a little bit more if it wasn't the 3rd of the games to be sitting at mixed reviews. So, as Paradox Interactive games go, this apparently isn't even one of the good ones. And I already own some of the good ones, so I might as well just play those. I don't think the bundle is worth picking up for this game unless you've played every single other grand strategy game to death and you just want another one regardless of quality. Apparently this game is pretty broken. I obviously didn't get far enough into it to notice anything like that. It's just not for me. It's not for me. I didn't like it. I don't care for it. But ultimately, so what do I think about Humble Choice on Steam Deck for the month of April 2024 in total? I think for $10, for €10 at least, you can't really go wrong with it. Fashion Police Squad is great. Hobbs Barrow is definitely very interesting so far. Callisto Protocol might be up your alley. Humankind might be up your alley. Coromon might be up your alley. Honestly, this bundle is solid. It is not the best one they've done, but all the games work on Steam Deck, which credit for that. Not that that's really something that they aim to do. And yeah, so if you only play on a Steam Deck, you'll at least be able to try out all of the games at least 30 FPS for the action games and at a frame rate around 30 FPS for the strategy games. Oh yeah, I forgot. Symphony of War apparently is phenomenal, so yeah, take that for what it's worth. I didn't see it. I didn't see what makes it overwhelmingly positive. You just pick up a cocktail from the ground and eat it, drink it. So yeah, if you saw enough games to pique your interest and you've never had Humble Choice before, make sure you use my link in the description and in the pinned comment, because if you do, that gets me some wallet credit for the Humble store that I can use to make this kind of video again next month and the month after that and the month after that, because money is always tight, isn't it? You understand? So, don't forget to do something nice for yourself, a loved one, and a stranger. And I'll see you next time. Goodbye.